Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Campfire Series podcast. Today is Thursday, August 6th, 2020. I am your host, Logan Soforenko. Thank you everyone for all the support you've given this podcast. It has been an awesome journey and we're still going strong. We want to welcome this week's guest on our theater podcast. She was Grizabella in the Cats National Tour, and she is currently in Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. Please welcome Keri René Fuller.
So I am Keri René Fuller. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I moved to Ohio for college at Baltimore University, and as soon as I graduated in 2015, I moved to New York City. I ended up just auditioning, doing the actor grind, regional productions here and there. And in 2018, I made my Broadway debut with Waitress, and then did some more regional gigs, went back to the audition grind, and ended up doing the North American tour of Cats as Grizabella, and then returned this past year and was able to join the company of Jagged Little Pill for a very short period of time before Broadway was ascended. I laugh to cope. I really just laugh to cope with it.
Tell us a little bit about your Broadway debut when you made it back in 2018 with Waitress.
Yeah, that was unreal because, obviously you never have another Broadway debut. You only have one. And I had been auditioning for that show since 2015 when I was still in college, so for the ART production. And so goodness gracious, I had been in for that show and in final callbacks probably 8 or 9 times, I think I calculated. And then very out of the blue one day, I just got a call to join the company because they needed a vacation cover. And then I ended up, after that vacation cover, I was on stage every night, 8 times a week when the unreal Stephanie Torrance was playing Jenna. And during that time, I was cast to cover another leave of absence that following couple months. So I ended up being in the show for 6 months. It was just, I'll never forget the feeling. I've always loved that show. I've always loved Sarah. The people were unreal. It was just the most perfect Broadway debut that I could have had.
So then your most recent production, like you say, short period of time, Jagged Little Pill, You're a Swing. Tell us how the casting process went for that one.
This one was a little closer to normal. So I auditioned as soon as I got back to the city from Cats earlier this year. And it was just have an appointment to sing and do some sides. And then also, this is also for a vacation cover. And then if you were chosen, you move on to a dance call. And then after that, they had you come back and sing. And then they had an entirely separate day of just this 7 of us that they were seeing much more closely, and ended up booking it. I had my audition, my final callback, I suppose, and then 2 days later I booked it. I got the call, and it was crazy because there are just shows that you audition for that you just know you would be a fantastic fit. It's just, and the fact that it's also a Diane Paula show, like Waitress was, it makes me chuckle a little bit because what are the odds? But yeah, I was in rehearsals I was cast to cover 3 ensemble women very directly. And then indirectly, because of who they covered, I was going to cover 2 or 3 more principal women. And I was in rehearsal. We had music rehearsal. And then we were on stage working our very first day of on stage time. And our stage manager comes out and he's like, hey, so it looks like we're going to be suspended until April. I was like, and on the third day. Like, how does that happen? We finished out that rehearsal. They sent us home with plenty of material to work on because, you know, at that point in time, we were hoping to get it under control, like abnormally swiftly, and that we would go back in April, and then it got pushed to June, then it got pushed to September, and now it's January. It's pushed to January. So, you know, I'm still working on the material for whatever day I, you know, end up going back to the show. We'll see when that is.
At least, you know, it's something to do, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. There's much worse projects to be working on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke with cast member Sean Allen Krill a little bit,
Oh,
and you know, he had so much hope that you guys were coming back, and I assured that, you know, you guys will be back, and you guys come back stronger than ever, and especially the cast is so young, you know, true teenagers playing true teenagers in the show. But with that being said, I guess one of your longer gigs that you had most recently was Grizabella in the national tour of Cats. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was the longest contract I've ever worked. So that was there it is. Oh my gosh, what a gag. Of course, like when I got that, literally my agent called me to tell me that I had that appointment. And I was like in my phone. And I was like, oh, they want to see me for Grizabella, right? Like Grizabella. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, all right, that's great, whatever. And I went into that audition truly just being like, I have nothing to lose. Like, I'm not going to get this role. Like, they're going to go older. They're just, I don't know why, because I was 24 or 25 at the time. Like, there was no way that I was going to get cast as Grizabella. I went in and it just went so well. Like, I don't know what it was, and they decided to take a risk and cast me, who's A, younger, B, not as seasoned as some of the other phenomenal women that they also saw for the role. So I'm extremely grateful that they took that chance on me, and it was such an amazing year. Anytime you do a show or a role for an entire year, you are going to change as a person. And that being mixed with the fact that you're on the road and kind of figuring out, it was my first tour also. So like I was figuring out what I was like uprooted and living out of a suitcase, and like, what does that mean? Like, how am I independent? Because, you know, like my boyfriend, I had to leave my poor boyfriend in New York City. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but like, I've got to do this. He was obviously so supportive and so kind, and very much pushed me to do it without a second thought. But it's a huge moment of awakening, because I came back and like, yeah, I'm still Keri, but I'm not the same as I was when I left. Singing Memory 8 times a week, working with just a truly ensemble cast. That cast was so stellar. Seeing all of the cities that we went to. We went to, I think by the time I left tour, we left on January 11th, 2019, and I returned on January 31st, I believe. January 31st, 2020. So it was a little over a year for me. And it's just kind of like night and day as a human being and as a performer. And I just have so much gratitude, especially now being out of work and not being able to perform. Even it's really eye-opening because I do remember several times that I was like, this schedule for actors, it's not sustainable. 8 shows a week, when you really think about it, is crazy. Like, our schedules are unreal. Like, we don't have the luxury. And this is just kind of something that I came to the conclusion of when I was on the road, because when you're on the road, you have a lot of time to think. But I was like, any other job, like, you can go to work and feel a little under the weather, or you can go to work like after you've pulled a muscle, and you just kind of make it work. You make it work in any other job. But in the theater industry, like, if you feel anything less than, 97%, then it's kind of difficult for you to do your job that night. And doing 2 shows a day, I don't know how my castmates danced that show for 5-show weekends. I have no idea how they did it. I was in such complete awe. But it was a wonderful year.
When you said, I was literally just, as you were finishing the thought about the 97%, I literally was like, you have to be ready to
Right.
go 100% every day of every week. What were some things you did to keep yourself not only physically healthy, but also, like, mentally strong through
Right.
touring, and not just with cast, but with any of your projects you've done?
Yeah, I feel like it's so important. And this also transfers, I believe, over into life as well, that it's so important to create boundaries. It's important to be comfortable saying no to things. It's important to know yourself. And that's going to take a while to kind of figure out what you need as an actor doing 8 shows a week for an entire year. For the first time in your life, that's going to take, so like for me, it was steaming regularly. It was not using my voice outside of the show, to like a crazy degree. Like, I obviously would talk. I also, there were times that I had to be okay with the fact that I was not, to me, 100%. The audience would never have known that I wasn't 100%, but like, and they rarely ever do. But you have to kind of have that reckoning with yourself of like, this is what I have to offer right now. If there is no one else that can do a better job than me at this right now, then I need to call out. And I remember I called out 3 times on my contract. And I was like, I just cannot do my job to the degree that it deserves to be done. And so I called out. And there's a huge like ego. The first time I called out, it was a bruise to my ego, which it shouldn't have been. There is absolutely no, like, calling out there's nothing wrong with calling out. And I think that was something that a lot of our cast struggled with, because it is such an iconic show for everybody that's involved. And we want to do the show every single night and every single matinee. So being honest with yourself was a huge boundary I had to learn. I had to learn how to, be gracious. I mean, I still worked out. It was important for me because I didn't have as much of a, physically rigorous show. I did dance in the opening number, but compared to my other castmates, like, I had the physical stamina to work out during the day. So I would do that. That was just a great way to incorporate ritual into a day, because it's easy, I think, to allow yourself to spin out of the ritual that you need. And so for me, I learned very quickly that I needed like 7 to 8 hours of sleep to function. So after shows, very rarely did I go out with people. Very rarely did I like allow myself to go experience like the nightlife of whatever city we were in. So that was a boundary I had to set for myself. How I kept myself, just ready. And because I also was doing so much press for the show too. So I would have like, I remember one day alone, I sang Memory 15 times. because I had to do sound check for a news station a couple times. I had to do the actual performance for the news, and then I went to another station to do the same exact thing. We also had just loaded into a city, and so I had to do the sound check in the venue, and then the actual production. So with all of the sound checks, with all of the performances, it worked out to be like, I think it was 14 or 15 times that day. But I also think on the upside, one thing that I learned about myself that also plays more into like how I was able to take care of myself is that our instrument is extremely, it's a very strong and resilient instrument. And as long as, you know, you're trained, as long as you never stop training yourself and making sure that you're learning in some way, shape, or form, then your instrument will only get stronger. So what you think you're capable of, you're actually capable of so much more.
That's great advice, you know, especially for young actors that are in their training for, you know,
Yeah.
I guess in college universities and just, you know, doing it independently right now because of lockdown and all that stuff. But so a lot of cities on a tour.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite venues you performed at?
Oh gosh. I remember, I mean, there will never be a venue that was more special to me than the very first performance, which was in Providence, Rhode Island. The theater was beautiful, of course, but like we performed in aesthetically more beautiful theaters than that, but there was something about it being our first performance together as a cast that just really took the cake. The Pantages in LA was stunning. The Fox Theater in Atlanta. Um, Obviously the Kennedy Center in DC. There was one venue in Alto, New Mexico that was very unique because we had only ever played to houses of, you know, over 1,000 pretty much. This theater was like a black box theater and it only sat like 300 people. So it was like we were performing Cats for a black box theater. And it was so strange, but it was so cool because it just like, it is such a testament to that, like a show can be transplanted very easily. And and as an artist, you can adapt to whatever surroundings you're in. So that was really cool and like kind of weird. What other ones? There were so many cities. Boston was a really amazing city and venue to work in. Um, yeah, I'm sure there are more, but since we were a CETA tour, we would have sit downs pretty much no longer than 1 week. Obviously, LA was 4 weeks, and like DC was 3 weeks. Chicago was also 3 weeks, Philly too. But most of our engagements were 1 week.
That's crazy. Did you ever have
Yeah.
any time to, I guess, because it's, you know, short, like span. So like, did you ever have a chance to like explore the city at all? Like did you have an off day on
Yeah.
Monday? Like what was that?
I mean, I was really lucky because I wasn't necessarily called to many rehearsals during the day. So, like, we would have, when we first set out with the original company of our tour, um, they would have rehearsals every now and then. Like, if a creative were to come, like, if Andy were to come, we would work the show, just clean it up. We would have day rehearsals for that. But I wasn't normally called to those because my understudy would just go on. Because it was an opportunity for them to, you know, learn my track. And then as soon as we started replacing people, as you know, people's contracts were up and they wanted to move on to another project, or for whatever reason they left the show, the rehearsals would become much more frequent because then all of the understudies would begin learning the show, learning their understudy tracks. All of the swings would be learning all of the tracks that they covered. I wasn't, you know, called to those, which was a huge of huge benefit to me because I was able to go out almost every day and experience the cities we were in. It was quite rare that I was called to a rehearsal, but my other castmates, they worked so hard. When I think about it, I was like, I can't believe they did that. But I was lucky. I got to see some cool places.
When it comes to, you mentioned understudies getting opportunities during rehearsals, you going from Cats, where you're, one of the main principals and leads, to covering multiple tracks in Jagged Little Pill, kind of that different road. They're like, oh, like, what was that like?
It's terrifying because I've never learned multiple tracks before. I mean, when I was in Waitress, I understudied Jenna, but like I was doing ensemble track 8 times a week, and then I was rehearsing Jenna during the day. So really it wasn't, they were easily distinguishable. Jagged Little Pill is a much more involved show as far as the ensemble, a lot more choreography, and a lot more different vocal parts as well. So it was terrifying. Like when my agent called me, there was like a twinge of like, okay, now the work begins. Now it really begins. Like, this is going to be a challenge. And I was really looking forward to it. But I'm not going to lie and tell you that I wasn't overwhelmed, because I was very overwhelmed. And I always had an appreciation for swings and understudies, always, but never like this. I was like, the swing brain is real. Like, going into different tracks subconsciously is so real. So there's a lot of respect there.
What's some overall advice you can give to not only just performers in general, but young performers trying to get into the business, and just how to take care of themselves? Just some final advice.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like a tad hypocritical when I say this, but it really is the most valuable piece of information that I have been able to learn and I continue to work on every day. So I just need to preface it with that I am in no way, shape, or form immune to this advice. I still need it as well. But it's that success is not linear. Careers are not linear. Nobody's journey through this industry is going to look the same. And comparing yourself to other artists will only hold you back, because I have felt it. I've felt it in myself. I find myself comparing myself to other 26, 27-year-olds in the business or in film and television, and I'm like, these people are starring in freaking Netflix specials or BBC, and they're like 22 years old. Like, what am I doing with my life? But really, it's just opportunities that are available. And when you really sit back and think, like, I could be unemployed today, but employed tomorrow and work every single day for the rest of my life, it feels a little more optimistic, that you don't have to worry about, just because somebody's light is shining a little brighter right now doesn't dim your light at all. Like, your light is it's shining just as bright. And we need everybody in this business. Like, we need all of the turnover. Doesn't sound good, but you know what I mean? Like the variation in our art form, and there's so many things you can do. So number one, don't compare yourself, because it's just really not useful, and it's just very toxic. And the second is just never stop training yourself in some way, shape, or form. Like, always learn more about your craft, because that's the beauty about theater, is that there's always something to learn. You never know exactly what you're doing, ever. The second that you do, that's when you should probably stop doing theater.
When it comes to, you said we need everybody. You know what I mean? That's one of the big takeaways. We need everybody in theater. But one last thing we can talk about before we wrap up here. You're a board member for Broadway for Racial Justice. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your learning point. Obviously us being white theater performers, just
Yes.
having that being a learning experience, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. First of all, I am extremely honored to be on that board. When Brandon approached me about being on the board of directors, I was a little nervous about
This
it. I
is
was like,
Brandon Michael
yes,
of Cats, who played
yes,
Old
old
Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy of Grizz and Doot in the shower on my Instagram page. We need to do more of those. But when he first approached me, I was really intimidated. I'm not going to lie, because like I've always, I've always tried very, very hard to be an ally to people of color. And I know that I don't succeed all the time, and that there is a journey of allyship that is also never ending. It's not just like a checkbox thing. You're always working. And so I was a little intimidated, but I was like, you know what? No, I want to be a part of this change because it is so important. It is so important to not only hold our industry accountable, but amplify voices and stories that need to be heard. They need to be heard. And when you look back at like when I was growing up, I had so many role models to look up to in this industry that looked like me. And then I see my amazing like BIPOC members of this community that did not have that same influence. And I'm like, that's wrong. And I want to help change that. And I want to amplify these voices that make this world so rich. Their stories make our world so rich. And it's such a shame to me. It's such a shame to me that the theater industry is just now understanding that. And another huge thing is a lesson that I've learned is that it's not just important. I mean, it is, but it's not only important to mourn and to fight and to protest and to, be aggressive and use our privilege for the BIPOC community. But it's also extremely important to celebrate everything they've given us. Because if you like rock music, if you like hip hop music, we owe a lot to those roots. They're not ours. So yes, it's been a huge eye-opening experience for me, and I'm very excited to dig in a little bit more, be able to launch all of the campaigns and all of the things that we're working on. We have a meeting this week, and I'm excited to see what new developments there are. And yeah, stay tuned. It should be a really, really phenomenal movement.
I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, but I really appreciate your commitment to not only just the arts and theater, but also to being a board member and using your platform to be an ally as well. But thank you so much for coming on. I wish I could have you on for hours. Many things.
It was such a joy. No, I'm really, really sorry that tech happened. I was I think I.
No, don't worry. We got 5 people on Wi-Fi in the house. Don't even worry about it. I'm just happy we got the time.
Me too. I really appreciate it.
I'll let you know when the episode drops, but in the meantime, take care of yourself. Keep working on the craft and enjoy checking out your tracks for Jagged Little Pill.
Thank you. I need all the help I can get.
Absolutely. Sending lots of love and thoughts to your entire company.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Nice meeting you as well.
It's so nice to meet you. It's so nice to meet you outside of, just IG messages.
It's nice to get, voice to voice contact. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you. And I guess this probably drops in a couple of weeks, but I'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow us on Instagram at Campfire Series Podcast for awesome updates and just a good time. We'll see you next week. I'm Logan Soforenko, signing off.